another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and today's special guest is Dr. Shefali Tsabary, speaking on conscious parenting. Dr. Shefali is an international speaker, clinical psychologist, and acclaimed author of the award-winning book, The Conscious Parent, as well as Out of Control and The Awakened Family. She blends Eastern mindfulness with Western psychology, integrating wisdom from both traditions. Her first book, The Conscious Parent, has been endorsed by Oprah as one of the most profound books on parenting she has ever read. This book revolutionizes the parenting journey and allows us to transform our relationship with our children. For more information about Dr. Shefali and her upcoming event in New York City called Evolve, October 21st through the 23rd, 2016, please visit her website at drshefali.com. Welcome, Dr. Shefali, to the call. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, so this is a very exciting interview for Well-Adjusted Mama, to have such a well-known celebrity to come on today, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic of conscious parenting. So I'd love for you to take a few minutes to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you really developed or why you developed your life's purpose of shifting the collective consciousness regarding parenting.
Okay, so I'm a clinical psychologist by trade, but I've been an active Eastern mindfulness practitioner and meditator for many, many years. And when I was working with families, I began to notice that many parents were in a disconnected relationship with their children, not out of any evil intention, but that it was just occurring over and over again. So I began to use Eastern mindfulness in my Western psychological practice, and I began to notice marked shifts. And what are Eastern mindfulness practices? Really, it's about accepting the child as they are, entering the present moment with your child, not being riddled with anxiety about the future or regrets about the past, doing away with judgment and shaming. So just as I began to incorporate Eastern mindfulness work in the practice of parenting, I began to notice huge shifts in the relationship, and suddenly parent and child were more connected. And then I became a parent myself and began implementing these strategies, if you will, or this belief system that our children are not here to be controlled by us. They are truly their own sovereign spirit who come to journey with us. And if anything, they've come here to teach us how to engage in life with greater spontaneity, presence, and awareness. So as I began to, seeing the effects of this in my own life, I began to teach it more and more. And then I developed this whole philosophy, of course, and decided to write about it. And my books, The Conscious Parent, The Awakened Family, and Out of Control, are really my ode to this integration of Western psychology and Eastern mindfulness, that we must approach life and parenting from both the Western and the Eastern framework, and they together will create the greatest and optimum connection with your children. So this is really the premise of my work, that we have to get more present, we have to get more aware, we have to stop living in the past or the future, and children are our greatest teachers to do that.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I think it's so beautiful, and I know it really resonates with me, this message, as a chiropractor, because I find chiropractic is very similar. Like, we really are into science and the anatomy, physiology, but there's certainly an Eastern perspective as well to the work that we do with energetics. So it's wonderful to meld the Western and Eastern together and kind of just elevate where we're headed.
Absolutely. I mean, you really need both perspectives. The Western way of doing is analytical, it's logical, it's linear, it's doing, it's achievement, it's outcome-based, which has its place, right? It allows us to survive and thrive. And then the Eastern mindfulness approach gives us the opportunity to detach from outcomes, so we're not so anxious and we're not so angst-ridden, and we're actually calmer and more present in life. So both, I think, have their place. And integrating both leads to the holistic growth of the individual.
Yeah, completely. I completely agree. I was curious, spending some time on your website and seeing, the 3 books that you've written and the event that you have coming up that we're going to get to in a few moments. You didn't mention anything about your actual childhood, and I was just curious if you wanted to share anything about that and how that kind of formed who you are and where you're at now as a leader in this movement.
Well, I think, my childhood was definitely extremely joyful. I was blessed to have parents who were very connected to me. Having said that, I was also immersed in a very traditional and patriarchal culture, and a culture that kind of stifled my expression as a young girl and robbed me in many ways of my authentic discovery of self. Even though my parents encouraged it, there was only so much they could do because they didn't know how to maneuver a culture that was very rigid and patriarchal and riddled with rules and ways of being. So this is also what I talk about in my book, especially the 3rd one, The Awakened Family. I teach parents how to counter a very strong and dominant culture. Even here in the West, we may not realize it, but there are very strong archetypal, stereotypical ways of being that, especially for parents, we have a strong dictum on how to be a good parent, how to raise a successful child, who is a happy child. And without our knowing, we've fallen prey to these belief systems, which actually cause a lot of anxiety in the parenting process. So growing up in India, I had to then find a way to fight against these cultural belief systems and regain my authentic connection to self. And this is what I teach parents here too, how to take from the culture around us what serves our authentic expression of self and obliterate and annihilate those toxic belief systems that actually counter authentic expression of self. And as a parent, we owe it to our children to not fall prey to what culture tells us about happiness and success and achievement, because these are not the pathways to presence and wholeness. They are simply not. And culture is riddled with anxiety, so culture believes that doing is the way to happiness, but it actually causes more stress in our lives. So I teach parents how to counter that and how to regain the sure and definite path to allowing your child to be free to find out who it is they are.
Wow, I think that's so beautiful. And, I know you have a private practice in New York City, and New York City is so, culturally diverse. You've probably had so many experiences with many different cultures, with the different families coming into your office. Have you seen, does it seem universal that many cultures are kind of similar that way when it comes to parenting, or are there some differences?
There could be some differences, but I would say parenting as a whole across the world is predicated on fear, on anxiety, on control, and the inability of the parent to realize that parenting is really about them, not their child. And this is the main paradigm shift that I'm trying to create in my work. This is my main mission, to teach parents that parenting is about them, and raising themselves into the highest state of evolution will naturally and organically allow their children to become who it is they're meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's the main. That's the message right there in a nutshell. Is really parenting yourself first. And, that's absolutely true. As we work on ourselves and grow ourselves, people around us, whether it's our children, our spouses, friends, family, they will all be, lifted up through that. So I think that's a good message for all of us. I know you work mostly with families, but what about people that are I have some listeners that are preconception, they're excited about becoming a parent soon, or maybe they're even pregnant, but they haven't had a child yet. Is there things that you recommend to people that are planning to start a family? The sooner parents start on this path of conscious parenting, they will be so much better off. I get so excited when non-parents or parents-to-be come to my events because, or I see a big belly, on a woman. I go, yes, you're starting this journey on the right foot. I wish even I had this information for myself before I started out. So I think the main advice I give parents is
the sooner you learn this approach and this mindful-based way of parenting, the stronger connection you have to your children, the less anxious you will be and the less anxious they will be, and the more resilient and empowered you both will grow to become. And, learning these tools of presence, of empowerment, of resilience, of courage, of joy early on in the journey, oh my goodness, it'll save you so much angst and pressure and fear that you really didn't need to have in the first place, but because you were unaware, you inherited it from the culture around you. So I love working with, parents-to-be and expectant parents, because that's when you get them early and start them off on the path in a really powerful way.
I think it totally makes so much sense. It's like really prevention. And in a lot of ways, like with the work I do regarding helping women prepare for birth, a lot of it is also still mindful and present-based. So because I find that better birth outcomes are created from that. If we can birth out of, from empowerment instead of fear, then there's going to be a completely different experience for the mother and child. So parenting's the thing, and I think that's great that people can start, pregnant mamas out there, you can start picking up these books, Conscious Parent, Out of Control, The Awakened Family, and start reading and learning this information, because really, when do you become a parent? Technically at conception, right?
You actually become a parent technically from conception, but you're really sowing the seeds for your parenting from your childhood. So and then because you have no control over your childhood, you have no idea how that childhood emotional baggage is going to impact your parenting. You think it's, I'm parenting from my adult self, and then you quickly realize that when your child when your 3-year-old throws a tantrum, you're a 2-year-old. When your 14-year-old pitches a fit, you become an 8-year-old. And you quickly realize that you're ill-equipped to handle another being because your own emotional development was stunted and you're just not aware of it because you've compensated in adult-like ways. But when you're now given charge of another being, you realize that this is serious. Doing the inner work and becoming conscious and becoming transformed from the internal level is all the more important, even more than achievement, doing, and having a career. This is now going to become very apparent to you, and that's why I get so excited when parents come to this early, because the earlier you realize that this is all about you and your inner transformation, the greater the blessings you can bestow on your child.
I love that. Really what you're speaking to is like the subconscious mind, like that's what's formed when we're a child. And to your point, when we're under stress, like with a tantrum from a child, it really bring out that younger version of ourselves, which is our subconscious mind. And that's what you're speaking to address and shift. Can you give us some examples of what parents can do regarding this inner work? Like, what does that look like?
Well, there's a lot that goes into the inner work, and it's not an easy process. The first thing to do, perhaps, is to, realize, intellectually at least, that you are a big part of every problem you're having with your child, simply put. Mm-hmm. And even if you intellectually understand that, at first, it's going to create a shift because you're going to be aware now that every time you're fighting with your kid, you're at least 50% responsible, whereas till now you may have been ignorant to the 50% because you didn't want to own the responsibility, so you were deluded to believe it was all your kid. At least by owning 50%, I really think it's 100%, but say it's 50%, okay, then you begin to say to yourself, how can I change? What can I do differently? How can I pay more attention? How can I be quiet when I need to listen? How can I stop giving advice? How can I stop commanding my kid? And then you begin to make the subsequent emotional and behavioral changes. So the first place to start is this intellectual belief system shift of it's not your kid, it's perhaps half or most you. It's at most you. It's so much about you. So making the shift first in a belief system then creates the shift on an emotional level.
Right. It's so true. Now, what about an example where, most families have two parents, and there's a mom and a dad, and I know in general, based on what I've heard, mostly women are showing up to your events, like mothers. What if the dads aren't on board? What do you recommend to these women who are completely hearing your message, resonate with it, and dads might be a little bit slower to catch up to this awakening?
Well, it's happening all the time. It's the most common question I get asked, and it's very typical. It's very normal. And what I say is that to the conscious parent, whoever that is right. that there is nothing that can stop you from blossoming forth and shining with your radiance. So it's an excuse that the other parent is not on board. I mean, would it be fabulous if they were? Yes, but then you can't use it as an excuse to hinder and stop your work. It is harder when one parent is conscious. It's better if both are unconscious or both are conscious, but life doesn't work like that. And the process of consciousness especially is something that, one has to expand and grow into. So if your spouse is not on board, it's because they haven't just been evolved to this extent yet, and they may. And the better chance they have to evolve comes from your example. If you want to shine brighter, that's the only chance they're going to have. Yelling and screaming and shaming them for not being on the path of enlightenment is actually going to create greater resistance in them, and they're going to be even more in darkness. So as the light bearer of the family, you have a choice and a responsibility to shine forth with greater awareness and light, and then the other partner may be inspired, and this is possibly the only way to get them inspired. So, you have no choice. Once you turn on the light, it's not going to get shut down, and one should not allow anyone to deter them from further shining their light.
I love that word, light bearer. I think it's just so beautifully put. It's true. I mean, we see that with relationships and couples where one of the people in the relationship feels like they're moving ahead, and this is going to impact multiple areas of their life, right? As a partnership, it may parenting is one of them, but there's so many areas, and it can create some challenges, but it's not always like divorce is not just the only option there. There's other ways of setting an example and the main premise of this work, is acceptance, is radical surrender and acceptance. Now, of course, you don't radically surrender and accept someone abusing you, but if it's just about different ways of expressing the self, we learn to accept our spouses for their level of consciousness, and then through this, hopefully inspire, guide, and teach them to join the path of higher evolution. That's so beautiful. Wow, I love that. So I would love for you to share with the audience listening about this really exciting event that you have coming up in New York in October called Evolve. What is that?
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. It's going to be in New York City, so if you have any New York City listeners, I hope they pay attention. It's a 3-day event, which sounds like a lot, but really when it comes down to learning a whole new way of dealing and parenting your children, it's really not a lot. It's Friday evening, October 21st, for a few hours in the evening, all day Saturday, the 22nd, and then finishing off for a few hours on October 23rd. It's downtown New York. It's about focusing on the evolution of the parent, and it's mostly led by me, taught by me, but I do have some other wonderful guest speakers coming. We're going to learn what it means to be mindful, how to extricate from childhood baggage, how to truly be available and present with our children, how to disengage from conflict and enhance communication and harmony, and really walk away with tools and strategies to be the most powerful, transformed and evolved parent one can be. For your listeners, if they email my office at office@drshefali.com and put in your name on the subject line, I can offer some limited partial scholarships to enable, all kinds of income levels to attend the conference.
It's so exciting. Can you give us a little more information about what you'll be sharing at the conference?
Well, I'm just going to really enlighten people about a different way of relating with their children. So I'm going to teach them new ways to engage in the parent-child dynamic, which reduces power struggles and makes people creative problem thinkers, solvers, and real allies with their children. I think most of our problems with our children stem because we forget to be their allies, and we feel like they are our adversaries because they're not matching up to the expectation and the fantasy we had about them or about us as parents. And when that fantasy crumbles, then communication breaks down. And I teach parents how to engage in a completely different way, to do away with archaic punishment and yelling and threatening and scolding, and truly find ways to communicate that enhance joy, partnership, cooperation, and connection. People have to be there to kind of experience it because it's a whole, journey that I take them on. But I can guarantee you at the end of the 3 days on Sunday when they go home, they will be a transformed and different human being, let alone a parent.
I love it. That's just so powerful. One of the videos I was watching of you online, you were speaking to how a lot of parenting, these challenges where the parent and child are, fighting, disagreeing. There's an ego that comes up for the parent of, I'm the parent, I'm superior, why aren't you doing what I'm saying? And I thought that was so fascinating because, to your point, culturally, I think many of us grew up with, our parents are superior and, the respect your elders. And you're really taking parenting to the next level. That's not about, it's ideally teaching people to get their ego out of the way as a parent.
Yes, because the entire parenting process is rife with ego. And what is ego? It's not just narcissism. It's also the entire false way we have adopted of living and breathing in this world. We've adopted these ideas that image and persona and status and wealth and income are the hallmarks of happiness, and they are really not. And as long as we keep believing that, then the ego becomes stronger and stronger and keeps us more and more mired in fear, because all of these things are dependent on something outside of us, right? Wealth is dependent on money. Image and status and persona are dependent on other people's opinions of us, or where we live, or how many cars we own and possess, or our careers. All of these hallmarks of joy and happiness are based on external markers. As long as we're attached to this, we will forever be subjugated to slavery, really. We'll be forever dependent on the whims and fancies of these external markers. What I teach is how to let go of the ego and enter a new way of relating to the self and the world, which is really dependent on your own internal sense of self. Most of us don't even have a strong, sturdy sense of self because we were never allowed to develop one. We were, displanted from our sense of self at a young age. It was abducted from us because of culture, because of parents who were unconscious, who used us to fill their need. And so I reteach us how to enter a strong sense of self so that you can keep your child implanted in their sense of self so that they grow up to be children, grow up to be adults who do not scavenge the earth seeking external markers of well-being.
Wow, that's just really profound. This is just something that is, there's really, I feel like not enough people talking about this, and so it's just so exciting that this is coming out and we can be having these conversations about what mindful parenting, conscious parenting means, and why it's so important. I think that's the other thing. Like, this is really fundamentally, raising the next generations, right, of our planet. This is really what parenting is about, and we have an opportunity to shift the way it's been done and create a better outcome, which I think is so important.
Exactly. It's about a vibrational shift on this planet to take us away from anxiety and fear to healing and abundance. You said it beautifully. That's exactly what this work is about. And it can only start in the home. Like, you can't blame a teacher. Yeah. You can't blame the education system. You can't blame the bully down the street because that's always going to be life. We have to take our power. And the most tragic thing is that we parents who have the most power, even though it may be limited, but there's a lot of it when in the amount we do, we're squandering this power to the external sources because we believe they have more power, and they don't. It's not a us against them mentality. It's about seizing the power we do have, and once we do and we hone it, we can truly raise children who are connected to their sense of self and abundant in their worth.
And then, I'm just I get goosebumps thinking about how that shift of consciousness is really going to just, trickle into every area of our culture, right? Because when these children become adults that have been raised with this conscious parenting, how is that going to impact business and relationships and future families? It's really exciting to think about.
I think so, and I don't think there are any guarantees. People often come to me and say, "Oh, your daughter must be the next Dalai Lama or the next, she's going to save Africa and India and all third world countries." And I think that's again ego-based, right? It's attached to the outcome. It's futuristic. It's achievement-based. It's some qualifier-based. That's not what this journey is about. It's about every child finding their own way. Even if their way takes them to the pit of darkness at some point, it's okay, but giving them the tools to understand that they deserve and own a very sturdy sense of self that has a right to belong here on earth. They may take a few twists and turns to, keep that in check, but it's always there. So that's what this is about. It's not about creating some special child. It's actually the antithesis of that. It's about allowing the child to unfold into their inherent, unique specialness.
So you have one daughter?
Yes, she's 13. What about you?
Oh, my goodness. Not yet. I'm one of those parents to be. I got married a couple weeks ago, so I need to be at this event learning what I need to know for when I do get pregnant and start my own family.
Yes, you do. You have to be there. It's going to just set you off on the right path, and we're all going to be so happy to celebrate this initiation into this new way of being. And it's the most fabulous way of being in the most fabulous journey ever. The parenting process is the most amazing journey if you learn this way of being. If you don't learn this way of being, it is going to be conflict-ridden, anxiety-ridden, stressful, pressureful, but when you learn this way of being, then parenting is joyful, it's fun. I mean, it's still stressful, but so much less stressful.
It makes so much sense to me. Are there any last thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
No, except that, check out the conference. It's in New York City. Come for it. Invest. I think parents have such a hard time investing in their growth because, again, they've been indoctrinated to have outcome-based measures. I'll join a gym or I'll make some money, become richer and thinner and more pretty. But to invest in growth, which is not qualifiable in any way, or not quantifiable in any way, is a hard thing for parents. But I encourage parents to take the time, come to growth-inducing experiences like this because you will leave these events a much better parent. It's the best gift to give yourself and your family.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you're anywhere near New York City, October 21st through the 23rd, please get your tickets. You can get them online from drshefali.com, and we'll have the link on the notes, too, for the show. But I think it's definitely something that I am committed to attending myself, and I'm right here in Hoboken, so there's no reason why I can't make it. But I know you're going to have families flying in from all over to attend this event, so you don't even have to live locally to make this event a priority.
No, we have 2 days ago somebody from Ethiopia said she was coming from London, Monterrey, Mexico City, California. So it's a real, it's just people may just not be ready for it, and that's okay, but it's not something that can't be done if one understands that this is the best gift to give your family. Once you understand that, you will take the time and the effort to make this change.
Yep, I completely agree. Well, Dr. Shefali, thank you so much for coming on the Well-Adjusted Mama today and sharing your wisdom, your beautiful vision.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.